First of all, can you just tell me a little bit about the play, what went behind it, inspirations, themes, just in general?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're getting good at this.
I know.
Yeah. All right. So the show was last year. The show in this slot was initially slated to be Nickel and Diamond, the actual play written by
Joan Holden.
Joan Holden. That's based pretty specifically on the book by Barbara Enright. And it was supposed to be directed by the former president of the theater department, the head, the director. And
But the president of the United States was going to direct.
he was, but then Nancy Lloyd's got it. Anyway, so she left the school, and Sven was then put into the position of doing it. And he read the play, and he read the book, and why am I doing this?
I don't know. I was just curious where this is going. But anyway, I'm looking at you, right?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. The play was well written, but that's where it ended, and it didn't address the issues that I thought were at the center of the book with the impact that they should have. And also they were topical to the community that we are in. So I was thinking about ways, coming from my background in ensemble theater and having worked with a political off-Broadway theater in New York for a long time, where we went into prisons and schools and hospitals to use theatrical techniques to give voice to the hurt, anger, and mutedness in those communities. I thought maybe this is a topic that lends itself for that kind of an exploration. And that's why I went we went about in September to start a regular pre-production work group that met once a week, brought in information, improvised, thought about sketches, and we had a political theater workshop. We did a Boal workshop with a visiting professor from Columbia here on campus. Boal is a South American theater practitioner who deals with theater of the oppressed. And in the course of that, Nolan stepped one step closer and said, you know what, I'm going to write this show. And Nolan and I share a background in improvisational theater. That is a very strong link between us, although we trained in very different places, but the basic techniques are, come from a similar pool. And so we started to develop scenarios and scenes, and he started writing script, and I thought further about the book, the story, the overall story shape, and and then we, put our heads really together for 4 10-hour days almost that were absolutely crazy in January, where
we came up with the plot line for at least the first act.
Yeah.
And ideas about the second act. And it was cool because we were working together to develop this, and literally just going back and forth. And you could see pages of notes and ideas. Most of them were never used. But that's fine. The show is long enough. And so after that, we then went about casting. And we really looked for people that would
commit from a personal point of view. We gave them an exercise in political clowning. Whatever they wanted to do with that had certain parameters, but we really were looking for people that were invested and engaged in the easiest way to describe this, and I almost can't hear myself say it anymore, is injustice and exploitation. And how are we part of this? How are we part of participating in what we identified as a culture of fear, which is governed through a system, an architecture of fear that exists on the outside of us, but also in our internal human structure. There is an architecture inside of us in response to that, which molds us into certain kinds of behaviors and interactions, social interactions, and social rituals, individually as well as communally, that became focal points of our explorations. We wanted to see actors who have no fear to speak up and take a stand as an artist.
So then we cast the show, and we started rehearsing. And a lot of the textual material was presented right away. A lot of the stuff that I had written And we started trying to plug it in to there's different parts and doing different improvs and devised things. But a lot of the show is based on stuff that was presented by the actors in rehearsals.
In response to an exercise we gave them or a scenario, I mean, Nolan started to do something in our 4-day creative period. I would talk to him, and he would look at me and just write while I was talking, and then he explained to me what he was doing, and he repeated that technique in rehearsal. Like, I would give a scenario to the actors, and they would start improvising, and Nolan would just jazz on it by writing, by responding through his writing to that which he perceived going on stage. And some of the most amazing writing came out of that.
Yeah, it's literally not all me. That's what's cool about it.
Yeah, it's a group mind that starts to work, like Politician Breakfast and Baroque Cleanup.
Mhm.
It's like two scenes that deal with oppression and, status quo.
And then we also began developing character arcs. That was really what kind of pulled us through the show and getting the whole thing done.
Yeah.
Is because it's a non-linear show. There's not like a really clear-cut storyline, which is one of the big differences from the
Traditional theater
version of that. So we began creating this quilt, and we had to find common threads, and it was a struggle for both us and the entire ensemble, including the designers, to find these threads and to try and weave them all together into something that was at least coherent. I don't know if we achieved that or not.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it's really an experiential play.
Yes.
So it relies very much, because it's based on the idea of a participatory theater model rather than a consumer theater model where we become part of a chain of commodification, like we become a commodity to each other. We are in the service for someone else always, and then by that rationale, we are also replaceable and disposable. And we wanted to break that because we thought about it as being unproductive. We went back to some sources in theater history like Brecht and Piscator, but also to a physical theater approach like Grotowski and Japanese Buto theater, Peter Brook's theater of the multicultural theater that brings together a variety of voices.
And Bogart, too.
And Bogart, yes. And definitely we became very interested in looking at the roots of American theater as it existed before it became commercialized. Because what I'm fascinated about is the spirit of resilience and resistance that historically existed and exists in the United States still today, but how that has been barreled over by this huge corporate industry that has disowned individuals from their participation in life, and the political system, how that has become part of that. So the idea of the participatory theater model is to provoke people into thinking by witnessing events and scenes on stage that we usually walk by or don't want to look at because they're uncomfortable, unless they're presented through the distancing medium of film, television, or reading about it in the news or hearing it on the radio. But they happen right in front of our eyes. We still know it's theater, but it's theater that engages differently because the actors take a heavy toll from it.
They do.
And we experienced it again last night. It was cathartic in a way that they didn't even realize because there was a big meltdown after the performance because it created such an energy in them, what they were doing and how the audience responded. They gave a standing ovation. It was quite really there.
No, I wasn't going to that actually.
It might be very different tonight. Tonight might be a total, what?